After telling my wife about being called to work urgently to attend on important meetings, I got out to have some fun with my friends and left her all alone at home. I do feel bad for doing this though, but for some reason I'm getting tired of her these days. She used to be so different when we first started dating, always on edge, thinking if she looked nice enough for me. Every time I saw her, she used to have a refreshing smell with her cute outfits and makeup. But now, after 2 years of our marriage, she doesn't care what she wears in front of me. She never wears any makeup. Hell, she doesn't even shave her legs anymore. She's still beautiful though and takes my breath away just like the first time I saw her whenever she gets ready for an occasion. But other than that, the excitement I used to have for her, touching her is fading away. It's not like I don't love her anymore. I know in my heart that I do. I can't even bear of ever thinking of my life without her. That's why to get a little bit of excitement away from her, I sometimes lie to her a little bit, just like tonight. Anyway, so I met up with my friends and we decided to hit up a bar. It felt good to take things off once in a while as we drank together and talked about our life problems. As I entered the bar, I felt the vibration of my phone ringing in my pocket, so I took it out to see who was calling me. But the moment I saw the name flashing on my phone, the emotion of irritation replaced the little excitement I had. I told her never to call me. Why on the face of the earth was she doing it now? Hey Simon. Just hearing her loving voice was enough to creep me out. What do you want, Kelly? I asked in frustration, with clear signs that I didn't want anything to do with her. Well, I just wanted to tell you that I'm at your home, but I can't seem to find Anna for some reason. My heart dropped as I heard this. There was no way she would have known my address. Did she stalk me? What are you doing? Anger started to fuel my voice along with fright. I thought it was obvious. I'm here for you, baby, she said with that same freaky voice of hers that sent shivers down my spine. How did you get in? Where's Anna? I asked. My voice was starting to quiver. I don't know, the lock was easy to open, so I let myself in. And about your wife, I can't wait to meet her and tell her about us. A weird eldritch excitement filled her voice as she said that. You need to leave right now. I disconnected the call immediately and called Anna to check where she was. I rang her phone 3 times, but she wasn't picking up, which made me even more agitated. But as I rang the 4th time, she picked up and told me she was out buying some snacks with her phone on silent mode. I told her to wait for me at the grocery store so that we could walk home together before disconnecting the call. As I was driving home, I started to remember how Anna kept telling me for the past few weeks that she felt like someone was stalking her. I should have taken her seriously. I should have done something about Kelly. What should I do? I know I told her to wait at the grocery store, but it's just 2 blocks away. My panic level only kept rising as I started to think of the possibility that she could hurt my wife. I would lose my mind if anything were to happen to her because of a mistake I made in the past. Why did I meet up with Kelly and get seduced into sleeping with her? I've been feeling guilty ever since, even though it was just a one-time thing. I called Anna again, but when she didn't pick up even on the 7th call, I called Kelly, but she wasn't picking up. There was nothing I could do before I reached home, and it was taking too long. I was holding my tears out of fear when my phone started to ring. As I saw it, it was Anna. I immediately picked up. Honey! My heart clenched at her sound because her voice was trembling, as if she was crying. Is everything okay? Are you okay? Where are you? I'll be right there. My panic increased tenfold, not knowing what Kelly did to her. The stalker, I think I killed her. She paused before saying that in a slow, shaking voice of hers. What are you saying? I asked as I turned left. The house was just a few blocks away. The girl who was stalking me, she broke into our house and attacked me. I didn't want to kill her. I just pushed her, but her head bumped into the table and she stabbed herself with the knife she was holding. She continued sniffling as she told me that. Don't panic. I'm here. You didn't kill her, okay? Trust me. I was almost there. Once I reached the home, I immediately parked the car out front and rushed inside. The moment I walked in, I found the house a mess. Anna was sniffling on the floor with her knees up to her chest. and her face hidden between them, while Kelly was on the floor. A knife was stabbed on the side of her stomach, and her hands were holding it. My brain went foggy for a few minutes before I could respond. I rushed to my wailing wife and told her it was not her fault. "Why didn't you tell me?" As those words escaped her mouth, as she looked at me with red, tears-filled eyes, my heart sank even deeper. Did she find out? What? I could feel my voice shaking as I managed to get a word out. I saw her phone was filled with our pictures, mostly yours. You were the one she was stalking. I'm sorry I didn't realize it sooner. It must have been hard on you. My guilt kept multiplying with every word of her apology. None of this was her fault, but the way she was saying it seemed like she was taking all the blame for herself. Listen to me, Anna. You didn't kill her, okay? You were not here when she died, I said with determination as I looked directly into her eyes. What are you talking about? As she asked me with an innocent face as I took out her phone from the bag and handed it to her. Just do as I say. Dial 911 and tell them I killed Kelly. Leave the part about your involvement. Understood? She looked at me confused as I told her that, but she didn't resist much and followed my command. When the cops reached, I confessed about killing Kelly and said she was stalking me for a while, but today she took it too far. It was true though, looking at how she had our everyday pictures in her phone, which were taken as evidence. As they were taking me with them, Anna came closer to hug me good as she was crying so much. I didn't know her name was Kelly. A cold current went down my body as she whispered in my ears. I looked up in her eyes, which felt colder than ice, even with all those tears dropping through them. She knew. She knew all along. Over the years, I have heard many men complaining about how it's impossible to please a woman. From my best friend Tommy to my grandfather Maynard, they all kept saying making a woman happy is no easy job. None of them were ever able to truly claim that they could ever understand how to make them happy. But it wasn't a tad bit hard for me, because I had made a lot of women happy over the years. But on one very unusual Wednesday afternoon, I made one woman a little happier than intended. My name's Charlie Huffman. I'm a 34-year-old masseur, and I've been doing this for the past 12 years of my life. All my life, since I started giving out massages to women, I never once heard any of them complain about it. But they did complain a lot about how unhappy their lives were, or how their husbands or boyfriends had no clue about how to make things right. I was so good at my job that once a woman received a message from me, they would insist on being my client. Because of that very reason, I had to turn away most of them. I'm a human just like the rest of you, so I'm also selfish and greedy like that. The only clients I didn't turn away were those who could offer me something better, something interesting in return. Some were ready to offer me tons of money, while some were ready to give me their gorgeous bodies. I have no idea how I developed such interesting and amazing techniques to satisfy them, but it was so clear that they all loved letting me take away all the stresses in their lives. It was one day when I was giving a massage when I received a special request from a rich lady named Patricia Miller, who had recently transferred to the town to give her a massage. It was her first time, so I thought I would accept it and see what happened. Her special request was that I go to her house instead of her coming to my place, so I told the servant who came with the request that I would be charging her 3 times more if I would go there, to which she agreed. I was supposed to go and give her a massage on Wednesday at 11 a.m., but I reached 8 minutes early. She had already prepared everything that was needed for the massage: a table, massage oil, lotions, creams, covers, towels, a foot roll bolster. Hell, she even had music prepared. I was quite impressed by that. "I've heard a lot about you from the ladies," she said in a low, seducing tone. "I bet you have." My tone was rather sarcastic, but it was pretty obvious that she called me after hearing about me. "Did you like the preparations I made for the session?" she asked in the same low tone. "Yes, I can see you've done your research. Shall we get started?" I asked, while keeping my tone professional. She smiled at me, and then slipped the robe she was wearing. There was absolutely nothing underneath. I bet she may have heard that I prefer my clients to keep their underwear on, but it was clear she did not care about that. Since it was her first time, I thought I would let it slide. She lay down on the massage table, and I started giving her the best massage I could give, because I needed to take as much money from her as I could. As I was almost about to finish the massage, her body started to quiver. Her moans became louder, and her breathing became uneven. That's how I knew what was happening. The moment I finished giving her a massage, she turned to me and gave me a weirdly satisfied smile. "When can I hope for the next session?" she asked while catching up on her breath. "I'll be quite busy for the next few days because of my tight schedule, so I'll let you know when I'm available." It was true that I was busy, but I knew exactly when slots were open. But since I did not want to give this woman, who was a bad sign, another massage, I made up an excuse. There are all kinds of women in this world. Dangerous, devious predators waiting to strike. And this woman was a piece of bad news waiting to ruin my career. It was because of my career that I became so good at differentiating women. And the best way for me to spot a dangerous woman was to see how she behaved with a man on their first meeting. That's how I figured her to be someone whom I should avoid at any cost. After taking my pay, I went back to my place, since there was already some sessions scheduled. The day went all right afterward, and once it was over, I went back to my place. For the past couple of days, I had started seeing this girl, and she was a real gem. But that night, I didn't get a call from her, nor did she answer mine. I thought she must be busy somewhere, so I let it go and went to sleep. The next day, I went to work at my usual time, but after waiting for about an hour for my first client, who was a regular, they did not show up. I called her, but she didn't answer. Thinking it might be a coincidence, I ignored it and started waiting for the next client. But weirdly enough, the second client didn't show up either. The limit of my patience was crossed when the third and fourth clients didn't show up either. Started to make me feel nervous and scared. That was when someone walked in. I felt thankful that at least not all of them canceled, but then I turned around face to face with her, and I froze. "You're not too busy today, are you?" It was Patricia. She was standing in front of me with a smile that disgusted me. "Did you do something to my clients?" I asked in an angry tone. "Well, it's nobody's fault if there was a fire during a tea party." She laughed while coming closer. "You're sick," I said with disgust in my voice, which she did not like. "You said you were too busy to give me a massage, so I just made time for myself," she said. "Why are you doing this? We don't even know each other." My voice was showing obvious signs of frustration. "Maybe you don't remember me, but I do. I was one of your very first clients back in Manhattan when you started your career as a masseur, but all of a sudden you disappeared. You had no idea how devastated I was, since I was in love with you. But now we can be together, Charlie." She cupped my face while smiling and telling me all of this. "Oh, hell no. Get out of here, woman. I don't even remember you. How can you think I would be with you?" I slapped her hands away and said all of this in disgust. She became furious and started screaming and throwing things at me like a sociopath. No, actually, the way she was behaving, she was a sociopath. As I was trying to get away from her, she fell and hit her head on the massage table. I went to check if she was alright, but she wasn't breathing. I couldn't understand what I was supposed to do, and that's when I remembered something she said earlier. I threw scented candles on the curtains and drapes and caught it fire before it could spread in the area. I got out and locked the gate from outside. As I was walking away from the crime scene, I'm hoping for her body to burn down completely, or else I would have to come up with another lie to cover up. It was around 11 p.m. when I was playing a card game and drinking with Steven and Harris, my two idiotic friends. It had been so long since the three of us got together and had a sleepover like this, and we were enjoying it until Harris used his substandard brain to keep the entertainment going. He suggested that we go to the infamous villa on the hilltop, a recent hot topic for being one of the most haunted places. I'm not a fan of haunted or supernatural things, not because I don't believe in them or anything, but instead, I'm a weak-hearted person. I even clench my eyes closed whenever we decide to visit a haunted house, or even people's houses during Halloween, which, by the way, are all Harris's ideas, since he's the kind of person who cannot resist being involved in supernatural stuff. I don't even want to think about where it would lead us someday. Well, I immediately rejected his offer, while Steven, his partner in crime, accepted it. You know how friends are, right? The more you resist them, the more they force you to do things. The same happened to me as I found myself walking out of the house a few minutes later. Why in the world are we doing this? My tone was defeated as I asked them. There are 3 reasons for this. 1, we get to hang out together. 2, it's thrilling. And 3, we get to find out if the rumor is true or not. He counted these on his fingers. I knew I had no choice of winning this argument with him, so I took a long sigh and got in the car. As we were driving toward the villa, we noticed a girl sitting in the middle of the road, which caused Steven to stop the car. Well, finding someone at midnight in the middle of the road near a haunted villa didn't seem like a good sign to me, so I asked them not to step out the car. Why? I couldn't believe my ears when Harris asked me this. Don't you find it strange? What would someone be doing in the middle of nowhere away from the resting area? I said in a low tone, fearing that she would hear me. And to prove my bad luck, the girl lifted her head and looked straight at us, making our breath get stuck in our throats. Should I turn back? Steven asked me in a slightly trembling voice. Don't be stupid, guys. What if she is someone in need of help? Yes, you guessed right. It was indeed Harris who said that. I sometimes swear he ignores all the red flags intentionally to get us closer to our deaths. Before any of us could say anything else, the girl walked to our car and knocked on the mirror. What I kept repeating in my brain was, "Don't do it, Harris." But that idiot, I swear I want to smack the shit out of him, pulled it down. The girl stared at each of our faces one by one before saying, "If you're going to the villa, turn back." Right after saying that, she walked away. It was strange. A ghost who didn't want to haunt us. Maybe Harris was right about her not being a ghost. But the bird brain laughed and said, "Oh, this is just like a typical horror movie. I bet there is some sort of illegal thing going on there. I'm supposed to expose it to the world." My mouth dropped at how dumbfounded I felt at the moment. This guy was insane. He was ready to kill us all. But my shock got doubled when I saw Steven chuckling along with him. Didn't these two have an ounce of common sense or even a sense of danger in them? And since I was here and these two were in the majority, I had no other choice but to follow along, even though I wasn't feeling good about any of this. As we reached the villa, we could see how huge and luxurious it might have been for its owner. But whatever the aura, it reeked of blood for some reason. I could feel the chill, but I couldn't understand what I was supposed to do if we were to face a real threat. When the 3 of us were walking around it, I was only thinking of coming up with a solution. For some strange reason, nothing about this villa felt supernatural, even though it was giving off such a menacing aura, and judging by the surroundings, there was also a feeling of someone's presence. It was like someone was living there. Maybe that idiot was right about this place being exploited for some illegal means, but if that were the case, we were in huge trouble. As I got lost in my thoughts, I didn't even realize that I was walking ahead of those two until I heard a thud sound coming from behind. I turned around to see Steven on the ground unconscious, while Harris's wide eyes were fixated on the man holding an iron rod. He had an evil grin on his face as he looked at the two of us. It was like he didn't even care that we were outnumbering him. Felt as if he were overpowered by that man. I remember him. This man was on the news a few days ago. He was a psycho killer who had broken out of the prison and was undetectable even by the FBI. He slowly walked towards us, and our steps automatically started to retreat. And within a few seconds, we were running inside the villa trying to escape from the man. Harris's pale expression had completely gone off the chart, as this outcome never even crossed his mind. I could believe it. Was he this oblivious to the dangers of this world? But how? As we were trying to find a place to hide, we came across a room that seemed rather dark and huge. There was a weird metallic stench coming from inside. But we had no other choice if we wanted to save our lives. We immediately went in and locked it from the inside. But as we turned the lights on, our bodies completely froze from the horrifying scene in front of us. The source of the stench were these rotting dead bodies. I couldn't hold it in and threw up, and so did Harris. "What should we do?" His voice was shaking so much that I could barely understand his words. "Shouldn't we call 911? I looked at him with my trembling voice. "Yes, you're right." He took out his phone and dialed the numbers, and the moment operator picked up, he started explaining everything in his panicked voice. The response that they would be here in a few minutes, and we needed to hold it by then. We could feel that man right outside the room's door, and we were scared as hell that he would walk in any minute. His murderous aura looming over us was so high that it felt alarming. "Do you think Steven's still alive?" I whispered, hoping the man doesn't listen to our voices. My fellow quivering friend couldn't speak a word and just kept looking at me with fearful eyes. We were lucky enough that a team of cops reached the villa and arrested the man. And as we got out of the room, Harris passed out. The two of them were taken to the hospital, and luckily Steven wasn't dead either, which I couldn't understand. But by looking at all the dead bodies in the room were of females, it was possible that his victims were not men. When the police were announcing the victim list on the news, there was a picture of a girl that seemed familiar. So I tried looking hard to recognize her. And that's when it hit. It was her. That girl who warned us from entering the villa. So there were ghosts in there. Just not the kind we thought. Hey Maria, guess where I am? I called my sister the moment I landed in my hometown Barcelona. Let me guess, one of those bars where you pick girls to harass. Her saying that made me feel a bit embarrassed, but she wasn't wrong since I'd gone to a different path there. It had been more than 6 years since I last visited after going to New York for college. Well, I wouldn't make any excuses for that, looking at how I was a bit occupied with my bad influence of friends. My sister Mariana had given me calls almost every other day to check on me and ask when I was coming, and now due to a minor issue, I had no other choice but to visit my hometown, and this time, I was here to stay. No, I just landed in Barcelona, silly. As I said that, I could hear her squeal in excitement, which made me laugh a little bit. After telling her that I would be home in an hour, I disconnected the call. Breathing the air of the place where you grew up sends a different calmness in one's mind. As childhood memories mingled with my thought, her face suddenly popped up after such a long time. Catalina. It had been almost 5 years since her name crossed me. It was as if my past was completely entangled with her reminiscence. She was one of the reasons I hastened to the college in New York, as I couldn't bear to watch her affection toward her good-for-nothing fiancé. That was also why I avoided all possible contact with her, and why I avoided my visits for all those years. Well, that and the partying with the girls. I wonder if she married him yet. Well, whatever the case, who am I to worry about that? Even after that, my subconscious mind couldn't stop thinking about her, as if a part of me wanted to avoid her. Another part of me was longing to see her. The first time I saw her was in kindergarten. She was standing outside the school with her knees covered in bruises, and the red of her hair was different than I'd ever seen. The first time I saw that shade of hair was hers, which was more carmine than normal red, and her big dopey emerald green eyes met mine. Even though I had no idea what I was feeling, I could say that I was captivated by her. My legs moved on their own, making their way to her as she looked a bit fearful while sniffling. The word came out of my mouth without my will. "Are you okay?" She blinked twice before her sniffles got louder, leaving me perplexed about what to do. But before I could say anything else, she ran away crying. That evening, a friend of Mom was to arrive for a visit, and she had instructed us to be on our best behavior. But the moment I saw a familiar redhead walking in with the lady Mom introduced as her newly made friend, I got rather intrigued by her presence. The two of us were introduced to each other, and we became friends swifter than I anticipated. My one-sided feeling for her started growing along with our age, but I was in denial of it because until the time we got to high school, I started to notice other guys taking interest in her. I swear whenever I saw any wanker eyeing her, I wanted to gouge those buttons out of their heads and knock their teeth out. And that was when I realized I hated picturing her with someone other than me. That day, I decided to confess my feelings to her. That was the day we graduated from high school. I was on my high horse that entire day thinking she was going to be mine, until she came over with her mom to my house. I was fantasizing about her in broad daylight as I watched her eyes dropping on her mom's conversation when I noticed her blushing to her ears, and that was not intended for me. My eyes automatically paid attention to the conversation going on in that room, and as the words crossed them, my heart started to sink by the second. They were talking about her engagement, but that was too soon. She had just graduated from high school. But on further listening to them, I got to know it was to strengthen the business between the two families. My gaze went to her blushing cheeks and her slightly curled lips into a smile, announcing the rejection of my feelings. The following week, that guy who was to marry Catalina arrived, and I couldn't bear to see the way she reacted to his every word. Those reactions were supposed to be mine, and I was this close to cutting him into pieces, but was holding myself back. I had already applied to a few college applications and was already accepted in some, but before all of this transpired, I was planning on staying here thinking she was going to accept me, which didn't seem to be the case now. So I decided to choose the college in New York and scurried there within the next 15 days. To avoid any thoughts of her entering my mind, I did everything. Party, drinks, drugs, girls, even forced redheaded ones into my bed. And eventually, I blocked all her memories. I had been a real mess for the past 6 years, and not just any mess, but getting into trouble, illegal messes. The reason I rushed back home was that I got entangled in the murder of 3 boys. I did stab one of them, but the other 2 were not my doing. Luckily, the police still had no clue about our involvement, so to avoid any further confrontation, I thought it'd be best to come back home. I didn't even realize when I reached home amid all this reminiscing. Mariana was right outside the house with a big grin on her face, and the moment I got out the cab, she ran into my arms. "Welcome, brother." It had been such a long time since I'd seen my dear sister that instead of bickering like always, I embraced her as well. My family had 2 British short-haired cats at the home who must have been of 7 years by now, and since I still had Catalina's number, I sent her a picture of them with a text that said, "I didn't realize it's been so long." Her reply was rather quick and full of excitement, asking me if I had returned and how much she missed playing with those cats. "You can play with them if you want to," I replied, hoping she would understand what I meant. "How do you suppose that to happen?" Her reply came pretty fast. "You come over?" I texted her back. After taking her sweet time, she texted, I don't know, it's been quite a long time since I last visited your house. What would Auntie think?" "Don't worry, I'm sure she misses you too. And if you're too uncomfortable, why not come when they are not home?" I said that because I knew everyone had work to do, so our house was mostly empty during the day. She gave a positive response and said she would be visiting the next day. The 2 of us talked for the entire night over texting, and I found out she didn't get married yet. She was having second thoughts about the guy since he was abusive and had done many unexplainable things to her over the years, adding to her previous traumas. At the moment, she was trying her best to avoid meeting with him. I know her suffering shouldn't make me happy, but I was feeling content that he treated her badly, which meant I had another shot with her. Just this time, I had to make her mine by any means necessary. Living in the bad places of New York had woken a rather diabolical side of me, And I guess that was the reason that a heinous plan was cooking immediately in my mind. The next day, she arrived on time, and the moment my eyes landed on her, I started to feel intoxicated by her presence. She had grown into an even more beautiful woman than she was before, and since there was no one at home, I could put my little diabolical plan into action. I asked if she wanted to have a look around my room while I made drinks for the two of us, and as she climbed upstairs to my room, I put the same drug I had used on many other women in the past years. When I got there, her entire focus was on a book, and the more I looked at her, the more breathtaking she felt to me. I handed her the glass with juice while I gulped my beer. The moment she took the last sip, I could tell that the effects had started to take over her, and she fell asleep. I put her gently on my bed. "I'm sorry, love, but I have to do this, so you can't slip away this time," I whispered in her ears as I leaned over her and nibbled her ear. Damn, she smelled so good. Her aroma was taking over my remaining senses. I slowly placed my hands on her thigh and started proceeding further. As I was in the middle of doing that, she suddenly opened her eyes, which only got bigger in shock, and I could feel a rush of panic taking over her mind as she grabbed my throat and flipped me over. Ah, yes, how did I forget she excelled in martial arts and self-defense, even when she was just in middle school? But how did the effect wear off?
Me and my mother were driving through our small town in southwest Virginia. My mother and father are divorced and he lives in Tennessee. They had very different viewpoints on helping out hitchhikers, as my dad was very much into hiking, camping, etc., but there was a woman walking down the road. Mind you, it's very hot outside. It's the summertime, and I noticed she was carrying a child swaddled up in a blanket, which struck me as a poor choice considering it was the middle of summer. Just seems too warm for a swaddle. So I say to my mom, "We really need to pick that lady up. Surely she isn't far from where she needs to go, but she's got a baby." And to my surprise, my mom pulls into the gas station parking lot, tells me to go in and get a large bottle of water, and we'll ask her if she'd like a ride. So, we pull out of the gas station and approach the thin, almost sickly-looking woman, and she very quietly just grabbed the door handle and got inside. Not saying anything at all, not even a thank you, which really didn't sit right with me because this is the South. Everyone is friendly and approachable, for the most part. So, we ask where she's needing to go, and me being in the passenger seat, I turn to look at her, and she's looking down at her baby and cooing at it. She replies without ever looking up from the swaddle, being about 2 miles past the Dollar General and Jeb Stewart, and we were very close to that area. I decided to turn and speak to the woman, maybe get a conversation going, but as I get a better look at her baby, it actually was a drywall hammer wrapped up in a blanket inside another blanket. I froze. It was like I walked into a deep freezer. I told my mom that I really think we should stop because I hear what sounds like knocking, and was very adamant we needed to stop at the upcoming Dollar General. As we pull in, I told my mom to get out of the car, that I needed her help to locate the noise, and we met each other at the hood of the car where I told her, "Mom, that's not a baby. She's got a hammer in that blanket." To which my mother advised me that we should walk inside to see if they had anything to help close that up, and told the woman we would be right back. We walked inside and told them to call the police so they could help this woman that we could no longer have in our vehicle, and explained why. My mother gave her some vague reason as to why we couldn't take her further, and she got out of the vehicle very angrily but almost confused, and we left her in that parking lot. She very well could have just been a really confused woman, maybe with some mental issues, but I don't know what was going on with her, but I do know that I don't think she had good intentions for us.
Pedros Death. Hey Ian, do you want to have a sleepover at my house tonight? It was my best friend Pedro who was over at my house watching TV. Only if we play the new Mario Kart game that you have, and you have to take permission from my parents, I said while making my way to the couch next to him. Consider it done, my friend, he said, giving me a wink, and then looked over to my mom who was in the kitchen. Mrs. Brown, my parents are out of town, so can I have a sleepover with Ian in my place tonight? I promise we'll not stay up too late, he asked my mom in a loud voice. Why don't you sleep over at our house then? Mom came closer and then asked him with a soft tone. It's because of the dogs. We cannot leave them all alone by themselves, he said. Okay, fine. But promise that you both will sleep on time, Mom said in a strict tone, and we both nodded our heads yes. After that, Mom packed the snacks and dinner to eat, and we headed out for Pedro's house. This house was 2 blocks away from mine, so we walked there. He unlocked the door, went inside, and I went straight to the fridge to put the food in the refrigerator. So Ian, I haven't played the game yet, not even a single time, Pedro said while showing me his new game. That's great. It'll be like both of us playing this game for the first time. By the way, which version is this? I haven't seen this in any of the stores, I asked while looking carefully at the game. I don't know either. When I went to buy the game, I only saw one copy of it, so I bought it, but I never got the chance to try it out, he said while casually shrugging his shoulders. I looked carefully at the game and then realized that I'd never seen it or heard of the version before. None of my friends have it. More like they've never even talked about this. So it might be either a new sample version or some old version that I never heard of. We decided to play it after having dinner. Pedro said that we were supposed to feed the dogs first, so we went there to feed them. His family had 2 golden retrievers who were extremely friendly. One could say, too friendly. We went to their room and filled their bowls. They were sleeping, but the moment they heard the sound of food, they woke up and came running down to eat. It's not like I don't like dogs. I love them, but from afar. I'm more of a cat person, and I've been befriended several stray cats in our neighborhood. After feeding the dogs, oh by the way, their names are Molly and Sammy, but I never call them by their names. Anyway, we went to the kitchen, took out the box that Mom had packed food for us in, and emptied it out into some bowls. When the table was set and we were ready to eat, Pedro came with a wine bottle and 2 glasses in his hands. You know, we're not supposed to drink that, right? We were too young, I said while pointing my finger at the wine. But no one's here, and if you don't tell anyone, no one will know either, Pedro said with a smile on his face. Fine, but if we get in trouble, it's on you, I said while serving the food on my plate. Okay, now don't be a chicken and let's just enjoy, Pedro said, and he put a bottle on the table. We enjoyed dinner with a wine while taking our sweet time. And after we finished the dinner, Pedro was the one to wash up the dishes. As planned, we were going to play the Mario Kart game right after dinner. So I went ahead and took my place on the couch and waited for him to finish doing the dishes. As Pedro was finished, he made his way down to the couch and the 2 of us started playing the game. The game looked like it could be played in multiplayer version and it looked quite fun. We started the race and I was the one to win the first game, which made Pedro charge of his challenging mode. Oh, it's on. I'm going to beat you this time, real bad, Pedro said while correcting his sitting position, and we started round 2. Okay then, whoever wins 3 rounds wins the game, and the loser would buy the winner whatever they asked for. I was also so fired up, so I made a challenge, which he accepted in an instant. After playing for about an hour or so, we were tied on 2. There was 1 more round left and whoever wins this round would win the entire game. But as we started playing the game, it started to glitch and then it just turned off. We tried to turn it on many times, but it just did not work. So we thought that it was dead. I cannot believe it. It's like they gave you some old copy of the game, I said while trying to turn it on. Let's just leave it. I'll return it to the store tomorrow. As Pedro said this, I was about to put it back, and then all of a sudden it turned on by itself. One weird thing was that it was showing 3 players, while there was only 2 of us playing. So Pedro put the game on 2-player mode, but then again, it showed 3 players playing. It completely freaked me out. We looked at each other and got up without touching the game, and then ran upstairs to Pedro's room and locked it from the inside. "What do you think that was?" Pedro asked me with a freaked out voice. "How would I know? It's your game." As I said that, some weird scary noises started to come from downstairs. It also sounded like someone was playing the game, which freaked me out even more. All of a sudden, the game's voice stopped coming. Instead, the sound of someone's footsteps approaching in the direction of the room we were in began getting louder and louder. Within 5 minutes, the footsteps stopped right in front of the bedroom door, and after a long pause, someone started banging on the door. I'd started to feel panicky and breathless, and I guess Pedro was experiencing the same thing as me. As the banging stopped, it started scratching the door and started making a really weird sound. Horror struck, Pedro and I looked at each other with frightened eyes, and then Pedro started to scream with fear. Right after screaming, he held his chest and passed out. The noises continued, and it wasn't long before I passed out as well. When I woke up, I found myself in the hospital, getting an IV drip. My parents were sitting beside me all worried, and I found out that when Pedro's parents returned the next day, they found dogs barking uncontrollably and led them to the room where we were unconscious. The door was locked from the inside, so they had to break it to enter. And when I asked about Pedro, my parents hung their heads in silence and told me that we were both admitted to the hospital, but unlike me, Pedro woke up and started panicking, but soon after he got a heart attack and died. I've been unconscious for the past 5 days and missed Pedro's memorial ceremony as well. When I asked Pedro's parents about the game, they told me that they never found any game in the house. I was quiet after that, only speaking occasionally when needed. And it's been like that for the past 6 years. Even after all of these years, I still have nightmares every single night in which Pedro comes to see me and cries while looking straight into my eyes.
This incident happened in 1999. That day, as I entered the house after returning from school, an unexpected furry guest awaited me. Our neighbor's 2-year-old golden retriever, Duffy. My puppy, who also happened to be a golden retriever, and I were pretty good friends with Duffy, so the moment he saw me, he gave me a playful leap at me, tackling me in the process, and started licking me. I laughed as I talked with the dogs in my cute voice before asking my sister, who was sitting on the couch watching a cartoon program, about why Duffy was at our house. She was so lost in the show that she didn't hear me at first, but when I asked her again, louder this time, she turned her focus to me before telling me our neighbor had gone on vacation for a week and had left him in our care. Since we love dogs, watching him was no problem as long as I didn't have to do it alone. I stayed with Duffy and Luna, who had come to play with me too, for a while before getting up and proceeding to my room. It seemed Duffy was shedding, for my clothes were covered in fur by then. I gave myself a glance in the mirror before deciding to take a quick shower and get changed into a new pair of clothes. I grabbed the towel and headed straight to the bathroom. It took me about 20 minutes to get myself completely cleaned and free of Duffy's fur. Once I was done, I headed to the kitchen to get something to eat. My sister Ellie was now playing with her toys while Luna and Duffy were keeping her company in her pretend scenario of whatever game she was imagining this time. I opened the refrigerator and spotted the sandwich at the front. Grabbing 2 off the plate, I took them out to eat. I glanced at my sister and the dog and smiled at them as I took a bite of the sandwich. I finished the small sandwiches in a few minutes, and since my hunger hadn't subsided, I opened the refrigerator again and started looking for something else to eat. That was when my eyes landed on guacamole, something I neither liked nor disliked. I took the dish out and served it on a plate before making my way to the dining room. As I was almost finished with my food, I heard a terrifying high-pitched shriek that startled me. Worried leaving my plate, I ran toward the source, only to find the dog standing at the top of the stairs while my sister was at the bottom. Their focus was on the beaten-up Furby, which was down the stairs making the same screeching sound while its eyes and beak twitched. Judging by the expression Ellie was making, she was about to cry any minute now. The dogs had begun to wildly bark at the doll as if they were trying to warn it to go away. I didn't blame any of them for the way they were reacting, because as I was looking at the damn Furby, it seemed it had come out of a horror movie. The thing looked haunted. Without saying a word, I approached the Furby and picked it up. While my sister fought back her tears while panicking, I silently searched around its body before finally spotting what I was looking for. Once I removed the batteries, I looked at my sister and kneeled to her height before saying, "Throw this out. I'll buy you a new toy." She nodded in affirmation, and I returned to finish what was left of the guacamole in my plate before washing and drying it. The rest of the day went as usual, and I didn't think much about what happened. My sister also forgot playing with her toys and the dogs. Mom and Dad returned from work at their usual time as well. We had dinner together while having casual conversations before we each ended up heading to bed. I don't remember at what time I fell asleep, but around 2 a.m. or so, I was startled awake by the sound of the chainsaw and someone saying, "I want to play, I'm hungry." My eyes were met with a pair of artificial gleaming eyes which were less than a foot from my face. I remember the feeling of my soul leaving my body as I jolted away from the life-size Furby wielding the chainsaw in his hands while repeating the same words over and over again. I tried screaming at the top of my lungs, but it felt as if my voice was stuck in my throat, and it didn't come out. Despite my multiple attempts, I couldn't let a single word out of my mouth while the Furby closed the distance between us with each passing second. I ran toward the door and tried to get out of there, but for some reason I couldn't get through. It was as if there was an invisible barrier preventing me from escaping. Helpless, I put my hands over my ears and clenched my eyes. Before I knew it, everything went dark and I blacked out. When I woke up next, it was by the sound of my alarm. As I got up, the events from the previous night were still vivid in my memory, and my mind was unable to comprehend the fact that all too realistic incident that transpired, what felt like moments ago, was just a nightmare. However, just to be safe, I ran to Ellie's room and woke her up, asking if she had thrown that ominous doll or not. She got up rubbing her eyes, trying to make sense of what I was saying before realizing and telling me that she had thrown it in the dumpster. I took a sigh of relief before calmly asking her to get up and get ready for school. Then I made my way to my room to go do the same.
Shortly after I graduated college, I decided to do a little traveling around Southeast Asia. I'm not some trust fund baby. The only reason I had the money was because my dad had died in my senior year. It was a mammoth task just to ensure that the grief didn't affect my studies too much, so by the time I graduated, a long vacation was sorely needed. So a few days after I arrived in Bangkok, I was exploring the Khao San Road when I bumped into a bunch of other Americans. I know I was supposed to be soaking up in ancient Eastern culture, but my God, if it wasn't good to hear some familiar accents that far away from home. But as much as it was nice to meet up with those guys, they were way too crazy for me to party with. All I wanted was a few beers and some Thai street food. But those crazy leathernecks were trying to take themselves out by vodka while chasing snake blood. And that wasn't code for anything either. They were literally looking for a place that would let them eat a snake's still beating heart before downing a shot of its blood. Like I said, way too crazy for me. So when we bumped into a Canadian dude who was working more at my pace, I said my goodbyes to the leathernecks who were headed to some crazy strip club, while me and a Canadian guy moved on to somewhere much more chill. We found this little sports bar, got talking hockey, and ended up chatting with these two hot South African girls. I'm working on one, he's working on the other, and at one point, one of the girls invites me into the little smoking area for a cigarette. I don't smoke, but I sure followed to keep up the momentum, so we ended up chatting and flirting out front of this little sports bar, right up until we heard the scream. Obviously, our conversation ceases immediately and we're both looking around to try and see where the scream came from. And it didn't take us long to find out. Because just across the street, clear as day, is this Thai guy and he's punching some black girl in the face over and over again. And what's worse, no one was doing a thing about it. They're just walking past, pretending it isn't happening. Now I realize that not only should I do something, but I'm presented with a golden opportunity to impress this South African girl by being a genuine white knight. So, I give her my beer to hold and I run over and try to break up what was a very one-sided fight. I'm all like, hey, what's going on, man? She's a girl. You can't hit a girl like that. He lets her go. She runs away. And now it's just me and this guy, with almost everyone in the street staring at us, waiting for me to do something. I lower my voice, adopt a slightly more respectful tone, and tell him, look, man, you can't just hit girls like that. But the guy just steps to me, this grin on his face as I realize the bouncers from this nearby bar, as well as a handful of tuk-tuk drivers, are all walking over to encircle us. It's only then that I realize there was a good reason why no one had tried to stop this guy from hitting that girl. He was somebody well known to locals and tourists alike. He was someone bad. You don't know who I am, do you? The guy said in alarmingly perfect English. Most Thai people know at least a little English, so they're able to corral tourists, but it's heavily accented. But this guy talked with what I can only describe as a British accent, like he was that well-spoken. I just told him no, not exactly the truth, but it was more like I just needed to see where the situation was headed. Then as I'm eyeing this guy's backup, which had just materialized out of nowhere, the man himself takes a step forward, put his hand around me so he's grabbing the back of my neck, then draws his fist back in preparation to punch me. Now, I'm not exactly some MMA master, but I did attend some jiu-jitsu classes in high school, so I knew enough to be able to block the punch by dropping my head and raising both hands flat to my forehead. I follow up by shoving him away from me and then trying to back up to get out of there. But bang. Someone behind or to the side of me throws a sucker punch, and I just felt my knees buckle out from under me. Next thing I know, I'm being helped into some other bar by some guys who'd obviously seen me getting destroyed. They're trying to hold me up and they're trying to walk me behind a bar, probably to give me some first aid in a back office or something. I'm hazy, beyond belief, but I'm grateful enough to the guys helping me that I try to turn a little to thank them. And that's when I see it's the same guys who had just knocked me out in the first place. They weren't holding me tight to keep me up steady. They were holding me so I couldn't get away. They wanted to get me in the back of that bar, right, but I suddenly realized that it probably wasn't for anything good. So I start to buck and wriggle, trying to escape their grip. More punches come in. I start screaming for help and I turn to look at all the customers, trying to see if any of them will help me. But then again, it was just like when that girl was getting punched. All these faces, Western and Thai alike, and they're either just silently staring or acting like nothing is happening at all. I've never been as scared as that in all my life, man. It's one thing having something scary happen to you, but it's another when all kinds of people can see it, but are either too scared or too apathetic to do anything about it. That's a special kind of terror right there. And it comes with this feeling of doom. I don't know how else to describe it. Like you're condemned. Like you're a dead man walking. Then right as they get behind the bar, right when they pry my grip off the bar hatch, I hear this oddly familiar voice shouting, Hey, get your hands off that man. I look up, and it's the Marines I've been drinking with earlier. They must have been walking past the bar, still in the search for snake blood, and heard all the help screams I was bellowing out. Then, being the kind of people they were, they ran in the direction of the trouble and found me. I know you all probably want to hear about some big bar fight that exploded into action with tables and chairs being thrown as the Marines came to my rescue. But fortunately for me, there was no such destruction. Once the Marines made it clear that I was with them, I figured the Thai gangster thugs must assume that I was a Marine too, and if they ended up beating up or killing a US serviceman, there might have been more trouble for them than what it's worth. So they just let me go, with the gangster dude making out that there had been some kind of mistake. He even apologized to me as I limped out, telling me to come back soon with your friends, drinks are on me. But dear God, I'd never go back there. In fact, I tried to avoid the Khao San Road entirely after that. I know it's mostly just friendly business types, giving the younger tourists a fun experience abroad, but there are people down there who live and breathe violence and exploitation, and I think that's what I want to say to any prospective travelers. Don't treat foreign countries like places you can't be hurt, or where actions don't have consequences, because as much as I think I did the right thing overall, I know it almost got the life beat out of me, and maybe even worse.
It's 2 a.m., and I can't sleep because of my mom's voice. William, where are you? Please, just say something so that I can follow your voice and find you. Mom mumbles in her sleep every night these same words, even though I'm right by her side. Doctors say that my mom has PTSD symptoms because of what happened to my brother. It's been a year since that incident occurred, and I haven't recovered from that physically nor mentally. Right before ChuckECheese was about to go bankrupt, COVID-19 had already spread across the world, and the lockdown was announced. It was our last chance to hang out with our friends at our favorite place, ChuckECheese. So I went upstairs and called my brother Jake and asked him to lend me money from his monthly allowance, but he didn't respond. So I thought he must be studying, and it's best not to disturb him. Jake used to be a book nerd, and he used to wear glasses from an early age. He was timid and obedient, and didn't have any friends beside me. While I, on the other hand, was a rebel. I went downstairs and sneaked out without letting my mom know, like I always did. When I reached ChuckECheese, my friends were waiting for me near the arcade at our usual spot, and Jake was already there. Jake never hung out with us, but after hearing about the lockdown, he might have changed his mind. So I laughed and teased Jake for being brave for once in his life. My friends also started to make fun of him. One of my friends, Henry, suggested that he is willing to take Jake in our group if Jake can do something daring, to which Jake instantly agreed. I was shocked to hear it, but I knew he wouldn't actually do anything because he was weak and he gets scared easily. All of us went inside together and headed toward our favorite games. Jake chose to play a popular shooting simulator game. In the arcade, some of the games were more popular and we had to wait in queues for our turn. Jake spent an hour waiting for his turn, while we finished playing a racing game and went on to play other games. But I couldn't enjoy my games because I was focused on Jake the whole time. It was quite unbelievable to see how patient and calm he was, or maybe it was just his presence that bothered me. Later, we decided to take a break and then eat some pizza, so I went ahead and asked Jake to lend me money. Jake denied, and he kept on playing the game. After we finished eating, Henry said, "About that daring activity, will you be able to do it?" And Jake replied, "Yeah, of course." Henry was about to say something, but I interrupted him and said, "The pizza had less cheese today. If you can bring some from the kitchen, then we will accept you into our group." "Okay, I'll go home and bring it for you, William," Jake replied. I laughed and said, "You act smart, but you're actually dumb. I meant bring cheese from the ChuckECheese kitchen." All my friends laughed at my remark that I made about Jake. I felt guilty on the inside, but couldn't show it in front of my friends. I was only able to become friends with them because I acted cool. Otherwise, none of them would have accepted me either. My family was not very well off. We had been struggling financially since Dad left. Mom has always been busy with her job as a nurse. She works in the hospital in the front of the house. That's probably the reason why Jake used to keep his head immersed in the books, and I used to crave attention from others. It was getting dark, and we decided to go back home, but Jake insisted that he will complete the task. So we stayed for a while, when Jake left to bring cheese from the ChuckECheese kitchen. Almost an hour passed, but Jake didn't return. So Henry and Ivan concluded that he ran away because he is not brave at all. I was feeling uneasy, but couldn't say anything in front of them, so I left with them without looking for Jake. After I reached home, I was tired, so I fell asleep on the couch waiting for Jake and Mom. Later that night, I heard my mom screaming my brother's name. She was looking for him, but he couldn't be found. She searched for him everywhere, and I was so scared, so I didn't tell her about the ChuckECheese hangout. She told me to stay home and went out to look for my brother. Next morning, a policeman came to our house and told him that they had found a body some locals had recognized him, and it was my brother. Apparently, there was a fire incident in the ChuckECheese kitchen, and the boy was stuck in there. His lower body was damaged from the fire, and his lungs were damaged from too much smoke inhalation. My mother fainted after seeing the body, and she was taken to a hospital. The police started questioning me regarding the incident. I told them that I went there with my twin brother and friends, and how we played games, and teased him a little, asking him to bring cheese from the kitchen, and how when my brother didn't come back, we assumed that he got scared, ran home, and all of my friends left, saying he must have left early. But I went back for him, and I didn't find him there, even after spending an hour looking for him, so I returned home as well. The police took my statement and started an investigation. After a few days, they informed us that someone left the oven open and a short circuit occurred that caused a fire. After the funeral of my brother, my mom and I were getting therapy, but for some reason, it wasn't working for either of us. My behaviors changed completely after that incident. According to the doctor and my mom, I had become timid and frail physically and mentally. But they don't know that I had been like this, timid and frail. It was my brother who was a rebel and stronger than me. I looked at William's picture that was hanging on the wall and said, "Sorry, brother. I couldn't live in your shadow for too long, and I couldn't tell Mom that it's not me who had died, but you."
We're going all the way back to the fall and winter of 1976 for this one. I know, I'm old. And granted, it's an old story, I promise you it's a good one. And in the summer of 76, my stupid self decided to move out to California. It was a well-meaning venture, I assure you, but a failed one in every conceivable aspect. I'd moved back to Arkansas less than a year after I moved out there. In a place like home, I suppose. But it also might have had something to do with a roommate I had when I was living in Sacramento. I was kind of a latecomer to the hippie movement, too young for the summer of love or the Vietnam protests, but seeing what the war did to my old man was just awful. I was young, real young when he came back, but I remember how different he was, just like a little piece of him was lost over there somehow. So, it wasn't until the mid-70s that I got a wild hair up my butt to move out to San Francisco. My old man said he'd give me $100 in bus money if I stayed in high school long enough to graduate. So, I did. And that same summer I headed out to San Fran on a Greyhound bus. Only I didn't quite make it. I stopped to see a guy I used to go to camp with in Sacramento and, well, just sort of stayed there. His parents offered me their spare room until I had enough money to carry on to Frisco, but living there made me feel like a bum. So, after squirreling away my first 2 paychecks, I decided to move into a shared apartment with 2 strangers. I meet up with a landlord at the house in question. We do a little walk around and he shows me where I'll be staying. The place was really nice. 3 separate bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, then all the ground floor facilities you could imagine. Kitchen, laundry room, TV room, garage, and the rent was enticingly low considering it was such a nice place. Both guys who lived there were out at work at the time, so I didn't get to meet any of them in advance, and obviously I wasn't permitted to nosy around in either of their bedrooms, so I really didn't get a sense of their personalities. But boy, was that about to change fast. A week later, I moved into the free room and met the 2 guys I'd be living with. One guy was named Richard, and the other guy was named Brad. Richard seemed kinda weird and untidy, but he seemed to mostly keep to himself, while Brad was much more friendly and outgoing. The thing was, Brad was moving out at some point over the following 2 weeks, and he wanted to give me the skinny on Richard before he left. Basically, he asked me how badly I needed the room. I told him real bad. It was either there or be homeless for the foreseeable future. And that's when he tells me that Richard can be cool when he wants to be, but he's definitely a few cards short of a full deck. I asked him what he means by that, and he just replies, You'll see. Just keep your eye out for other apartments. The B generally has some good listings. At first, I just figured I'd waded into some slightly bitter roommate rivalry or politics, and I wanted nothing to do with it. I wasn't about to take sides after having been there for a grand total of 5 minutes, so I decided to play it diplomatically. But Brad was right. Richard was really weird. And not even weird in a fun, hippie way. He wasn't just waving his freak flag high, man. He was the freak flag, all on his own. First time I noticed was when I walked into the kitchen and Richard was sat at the table, reading a newspaper while holding an orange on top of his head. I asked him what he was doing, and he replied something like, absorbing vitamin C. I laughed, thinking he was just being silly, but when I turned to look at him, deadpan. The guy was deadly serious. I start explaining that's not how nutrition works, and he responds by telling me not to lecture him on what goes on in his body, how it was his body and he knew best about it. Naturally, I'm just like, okay, dude, whatever you say. Being as non-confrontational as possible, but the second I saw Brad, I conceded that he was right. Richard was crazy. Just how crazy, I had no idea, but I was sure about to find out. Richard's behavior remained curiously strange until the time that Brad moved out. It wasn't anything too scary, just stuff that made you roll your eyes or shake your head. Like at one point, we're eating dinner in front of the TV, and Richard kind of sits up, stares into space for a moment, checks his own pulse, then says, "My heart just stopped beating." Brad seemed to have learned his lesson how to deal with such insane behavior because he falsely expresses some mild concern before suggesting Richard go take a nap, which he then does. Like some hypochondriac child, he finished his dinner, then goes to take a nap to alleviate his, what, his dead heart? I have no idea. Like I said, it wasn't scary, just kind of annoying. All the scary stuff came after Brad moved out. In fact, I think Brad was the only thing keeping a lid on Richard's behavior, because the same day Brad leaves is the same day Richard took a turn for the worse. So, like I've mentioned, I was working part-time in Sacramento, working 5-hour shifts, 4 days a week over at a nearby grocery store. One day I get back from my shift and Richard is standing over the bathroom sink, looking into a piece of broken mirror he'd propped up against the counter, and he's shaving all his hair off with a straight razor. "New haircut, buddy?" I remember asking him. "No, it's my skull. I think it's fractured." "Well, better get down to the hospital, Dickie boy. I hear those can be quite serious." I'd pretty much adopted Brad's approach wholesale by that point, kindly acknowledge and then disengage. But Richard responds by telling me that not only is his skull fractured, but that he can feel the plates moving around under his skin. Now, I'm no doctor, but I was 99% sure that that was impossible. And when I took a look at his request, there was no bruising, no blood, nothing. He's just having another one of his hypochondriac health scares. One time we're having dinner and Richard dropped me a compliment on my sausage gravy. It was like a double compliment, since it was my mom's secret recipe too. Turns out Brad was right. Richard could be nice when he wanted to be. But then he somehow managed to ruin the moment by saying something like, "Yeah, you're a real good cook. Much better than my mom. She used to try and poison me." Again, like the thing with the orange, I thought he was cracking a joke, so I laughed. But just like the thing with the orange, he simply stares at me, totally straight-faced, and I realized that it wasn't a joke. Only this time he's actually kind of offended that I didn't take him seriously, and that's the first time I saw Richard's mean side come out. He just stared at me, holding his knife and fork so hard his fists were shaking, and for a moment, I was actually scared he was just going to lunge at me from across the table. Instead, he picks up his plate, clears it, then marches off up to his room. A few hours later, he apologized for being so rude. I forgave him, and thus the cycle began anew. He'd act perfectly normal, then some weird outbursts would have me reconsidering Brad's suggestion on keeping an eye out for a new apartment. But until I could get more hours at the Safeway, that just wasn't an option for me. If you remember, I moved into the apartment during the fall, and Richard's behavior had been, at worst, amusingly bizarre for the majority of my stay. But the closer and closer we got to Christmas, the more he seemed to be slipping further and further into some downward spiral, and it had turned out to be one he'd never fully recover from. And it was definitely one that was made entirely worse by our use of recreational drugs. Like I said, late blooming hippie here, so when Richard suggested we get our hands on some pot and LSD, I just thought, groovy, you know? I didn't stop to consider that might be a terrible idea given his psychological issues. I actually kind of thought drugs might help him, but good lord did that turn out to be total naivety. Like I said, I thought a trip or two might help Richard out, give him a little perspective, but using drugs just sparked some sort of fire in him. He didn't just use them recreationally like me and my buddies had back in Little Rock. He used them habitually. He tripped every night for a week, until I literally had to hide the little eyedropper of acid I'd bought for us. And when he finally came out of it, he was all kinds of messed up. The day after he sobered up, I heard him coming down for breakfast, and when he walks into the kitchen area, and I look up, I see he's as naked as the day he was born. Obviously, I'm like, screaming, "Richard, put on some clothes for Christ's sake." He just responds with, "Why?" Grabs some cereal, pours himself a bowl, then just sits down to eat. I was just getting progressively insanely more uncomfortable, and I couldn't bring myself to eat in front of a naked man like that, so I just got up and walked out. Huge mistake. Because I didn't properly address the whole nudity thing, he took that as him having a free pass. So, with an infuriatingly ever-increasing frequency, I'd have my roommate stumbling around the house, totally nude, while taking pulls on a bottle of Jack Daniels. Now, most people I've told this story to, they have said that they'd have been gone the moment the nudity thing started. But what can I say? It was the 70s. I was something of a freak myself, and if I couldn't handle one little weirdo in Sacramento, how was I going to stomach rubbing shoulders with hardcore Frisco hippies once I made it out there? Nope. Instead, the final straw was coming home to find him making cocktails. So like I said, I walk into the house one day and I hear the blender in the kitchen whirring. I wait for the break in the whirring to call out to him as I walk into the TV room. He had to walk that way to get to the kitchen, asking him what he's making. He just replies, "Cocktails," in this dull, flat tone that let me know that he was wasted. But when I enter the kitchen, I get this strong odor of whiskey, along with something else. Following whatever he'd been doing, Richard had evidently made this very out-of-character attempt to clean up after himself. But he hadn't been completely thorough, as on the plain white countertop, I could still make out what looked like streaks of some thick red liquid. I walk over, run my finger over a patch of it, rubbing it together between my fingers before feeling that it has a distinctly sticky texture to it. "Richard?" I said. "Is this blood?" "No," he replied. Suddenly I get this sudden urge to lift up the lid of the trash can, but at the same time, I'm also filled with dread. Whatever, or whoever that blood belonged to, there'd surely be remnants of it in the trash. In fact, upon seeing a small, bloody fingerprint on the trash can's lid, I'm sure that's where I'd find the remains. Then, of course, I opened the trash to see a bloody paper bag with what was clearly a stripy raccoon tail sticking out of it. During the mother of all arguments that followed, when I asked him what in God's name he was doing, he tried to palm me off with an excuse I've never, ever forgotten. He briefly stops the blender from whirring and says, "It's going to stop my heart from shrinking." Then carries on grinding up this reddy brown mess of soda, ice, and what I could only assume was raccoon meat. This crazy monster thought he had some rare medical condition where his heart was basically wasting away, and the cure was to blend the organ meats of trapped animals with Jack Daniels and Coca-Cola, of all things. Like I said, that was the final straw, and by that time, another guy was living there with us too. We discussed giving Richard a kind of ultimatum, either shape up or ship out. But considering he'd reached the butchering animals and eating them raw stage of his madness, we agreed the best thing was for us to just get out of there. I called my old camp buddy that night and begged my way back into his parents' spare room. I carried on working at the Safeway for a time, got some more hours, and since I wasn't paying rent in my buddy's parents' place, getting some bus money and a security deposit was much easier. I didn't hear no more of Richard, and when I finally left San Francisco in January of '77, I never looked back. Cut to just over 2 years later, I think about March of 1979, I'm living back with my parents in Little Rock, and I've cleaned up my act, and I'm working at another grocery store with my mindset on applying to colleges. Sometimes I used to get up real early and head down to the grocery store at around 6:30 a.m. to help the owner prep for opening hours, and a real small part of that was unpacking and arranging newspapers near the smaller front counter. I used to kind of take my time with this particular job on occasion, sipping my coffee, flicking through the sports section, all away from the prying eyes of the owner who was counting cash or whatever in his office. One morning, I catch a headline in, I think was the National Enquirer, saying something like, "Cannibal Killer's Trial Date Set." Obviously, that's not the sort of headline you read every day, so I start reading the article to get more details. And guess whose name I see, just a few lines down? Yup, my insane, crazy old roommate, Richard Chase. There's even a little picture of him in the margin, and clear as day, it's him. Same guy I lived with for the better part of 5 months. This is all from memory, so you'd have to ask Google for all the details, but here's what I remember. After I left the home I shared with Richard, his condition worsened and worsened over the course of the year, until finally in the winter of '77, he commits his first murder by randomly shooting a guy in the street. A few weeks later, he tries a home invasion, only the family isn't home, so he can't hurt anyone. So he decides to wait. But when they do get home, he gets the heebie-jeebies, turns tail, and runs. The family then arrives home to find that Richard had broken into their baby's nursery before going to the bathroom on the kid's clothes. He was absolutely sick in the head. A short time later, he tries another home invasion, and this time, he kills a pregnant woman. But here's the really messed up part. Before sleeping with her corpse, I read he put dog feces in the poor girl's mouth too. It makes you wonder what goes through a man's head to do something as absolutely insane as that. I followed the case for a while after, and I was happy when I heard he got the death penalty for the things he did. He ended up taking his own life before they could get him to the gas chamber, though. Figured he wanted to go out on his own terms. Only thing that messes with me is that some people say he wasn't crazy, that he knew what he was doing when he killed those women and did those awful things to them. I'm not saying he didn't deserve to die. That's not what I'm saying at all. Heck, I'd even kick the chair out from under that guy in a hot minute if he gave me the chance. But the only thing that's crazy is saying that he ain't. You understand me? I live with that man. I ate with him. I tripped with him. I know Richard Chase. And the cheese slid off that boy's crackers a long time before he started killing. He was crazy as a dog in a hubcap factory the whole time I knew him. And although what he did was a tragedy, I wasn't entirely surprised by it. I feel lucky to have gotten out when I did. Hang around for another year and it might have been me getting shot dead at the side of the road. But the thing that really sticks with me isn't the survivor guilt, or whatever people want to call it. It's wondering how evil like that even comes into this world.
Minecraft? What's that? Isla asked, all confused when I was talking with my friends about the game. Isla is my girlfriend, and we have recently started going out. She was over at my apartment to spend some quality time when my friends gave me a conference call. It's a very popular video game, interesting too, and once you start playing it, you just cannot stop, I told her. Okay, so how do we play it? She asked again. You build crafting tables, tools, shelter, understand the hunger meter and gather food, etc. It progresses depending on how you play it, I said, uninterested in going into complete detail with her. I want to play it too. As she said this, I jolted my head toward her and looked her up and down. Isla was the kind of girl who is more like a model than a gamer. Now, I'm not the kind of guy who judges others easily, but she has a chick vibe. The size of her average fake nails was a maximum of 5 centimeters long, and that's not an exaggeration. So now you can guess for yourself if she could play or not. Are you sure you can? I looked at the nail while asking this, which she understood and nodded yes. I logged into the game and started explaining it. At first, I guided her through it, but then she told me she'll play it on her own. So I shrugged my shoulders and went out to buy some chicken and beer. As I was buying them, I was thinking if she was able to play comfortably or not, because it looked difficult for her to hold the controller with those nails. When I came back, I saw Isla lying on the sofa and watching something on her phone. You're not playing anymore? I asked while putting the beers in the refrigerator. Nah, it's boring. I don't want to play it anymore. As she said that, I snickered, and she glared at me in response. I controlled my laughter and went to my chair to start playing the game because she seemed busy on her phone as well. My best friend Adam called and asked if I wanted to play together with him and the guys, which I agreed to immediately. I started playing with them and got so focused that I lost track of time. When I finished playing the game, I noticed that Isla had already left without informing me. I called her, and she said that since I was busy playing the game, she did not want to disturb me, and that's why she left without saying anything. After talking with me for a few minutes, I disconnected the call. I went to the kitchen and took out the chicken and beer. I heated the fried chicken, and after that, I opened the television and switched to the channel where the football game was already being streamed, and started to enjoy my meal while watching the game. The next day, Isla came over to the apartment again to spend more time with me, and surprisingly, that day Adam did not call even once to ask about playing Minecraft with him, and neither did he answer my calls. I spent most of my time with Isla, and as she started to focus on her phone again, I thought about playing just one game, so I called Frederick. First, I asked him about Adam, and he told me that he did not even speak to him since last night. We thought maybe he had a family emergency or something, so we let it go and started playing together. I checked the time, and it had been over 2 hours since we started playing the game. I looked over to the side where Isla was sitting, but she wasn't there. She had left again without even informing me. I sighed in disbelief because I knew she was doing it on purpose to prove something to me. She was the one who gets busy with her phone first, and then she expects me to just sit there and watch her play with her phone. I didn't call her this time, and why must I every time? If she had an attitude, so did I. After thinking about these things, I once again tried calling Adam, but his phone was turned off this time. At this point, I started to feel worried about him because he was not the kind of person who would ever put his phone off for this long. He answered every damn call, even when his father died, with whom he was so attached. The next day I called Frederick and was shocked to see that he wasn't answering his phone either. Even after calling multiple times, he didn't answer his phone. A random yet weird thought crossed my mind, that every time I played a game with someone, that person stopped answering my calls. Was it because they didn't want to play with me anymore? No. That had never happened before Isla came into the picture. She was here both of the times when I was playing the game with them, and each time she left abruptly. I remembered she was supposed to come over today as well, so I waited impatiently for her to arrive because I wanted to confront her about the situation. I wanted to ask her what she told them that they've started to ignore me. The doorbell rang. I opened the door, and it was Isla. She hugged me as soon as she saw me. She looked quite happy and said that she wanted to spend more time with me today, so I thought maybe I was imagining things. I went to the kitchen to bring some water for her, and when I was walking back from the kitchen toward her, I noticed that the phone she was holding seemed different, yet familiar. I thought harder, and I remembered that it was the same model Frederick was using. For some reason, I was freaked out by the fact that Isla's new phone was the same as my friend's. That day, I did not play the game at all and completely focused on Isla. I was imagining weird, horrible things. So after she left, I called Frederick's brother to ask about him, and what he told me shook me to my core. He said that yesterday after playing Minecraft with me, he received a phone call and then went out. He hasn't come back yet. I called Adam's mom just to check if my suspicion was correct, and she said, "I don't know where he's gone off to after receiving that phone call. I'm just coming back from filing a missing persons report for him."
My mom is really good friends with one of the wealthiest people in our town. They have a daughter, my age. I don't have a crush on her or anything, but my mom has pushed me to ask her out before. Never did. Here's the weird thing about the situation, though. My mom and this friend, along with her daughter, all kind of act like their friend. Like a bunch of high school girls getting together to gossip. My mom works in a beauty salon, so I guess I understand why she likes to act that way, but it's still pretty weird nonetheless. There was one specific occasion when this woman and her daughter were going to visit New York City. They decided to invite my mom for some reason. I don't understand why. I guess they really were better friends than I had previously believed. But my mom decided to say yes. So it was just me and my dad at the house, but here was the thing. They didn't have a dad at home. Their house was going to be completely unsupervised for the entire weekend. I was in my early 20s at the time, so I guess they thought it would be a good idea to ask if I would watch the house for them, which I agreed to do. I didn't get paid or anything, but they said I was allowed to eat as much food as I wanted, and considering that they were rich, I thought, why not? This also gave me an opportunity to write some short stories. I always loved writing, and I published some of my stuff online sometimes. I think it was that Friday night when I was watching their house. They told me that they had 2 cats, but they were really scared of strangers, and I was probably not going to see either one of them the entire night. It didn't bother me. I just had to make sure that they had food and water, which they did. I was chilling at the kitchen table, pounding the keys on my laptop on my latest story, when, all of a sudden, I saw something out of the corner of my eye. I looked up from my computer to notice the ugliest cat I've ever seen in my life. Just imagine a hairless cat, but also morbidly obese and cross-eyed. It was honestly the strangest thing I've ever seen. Any one of those traits individually would have made a cat kind of cute, but seeing all of them thrown together in one pitiful excuse for a pet almost made me want to bust a gut laughing. I felt kind of bad for laughing so hard at this girl's cat, but it's not like I hurt it or anything. That had been a good break from writing, but then I got back into it. I remember being in the middle of writing a really interesting scene. This ghost was abducting the protagonist of the story. It's kind of a psychological thriller with a little bit of paranormal thrown in there. It's very spiritual and weird. I'm kind of a weird person. But that scene still sticks with me because as I'm writing it, I noticed something outside. There was a man in a hooded sweatshirt walking around. I sat at the kitchen table, stunned. I didn't know what to do. I felt the adrenaline burst through my veins. Fight or flight. Well, I figured that my car was outside, so running wasn't going to do me much good. And after a minute of rationalizing the situation, I had no proof that this person was out to do anything bad. For all I knew, this could have been a jogger. I got up close to one of the windows to watch this man. He seemed to be sneaking around. He wasn't coming toward the house I was in, so I figured that I was at least safe for the moment. But then I noticed him looking into the window of the house across the street. I can only assume that he was checking houses to see if people were home or not. Must have been an actual burglar. Just show up in the wealthy neighborhood and see who isn't home. I don't know why he would do it at night, though. Looks as suspicious as he did. We live in a gun state, after all. And after a few minutes went by, and I could tell that there were people at home at the house he was checking out, by the time he realized, I noticed him do a 180. He was walking in my direction now. I was about to be face to face with this man. I saw him walking across the street and I immediately started to panic. I called the police as fast as I could and told them the situation, but they said it would be about 20 minutes before anyone could be here. I ran up to the attic to hide. I locked the door behind me. In retrospect, this was my biggest mistake. I should have turned on a bunch of lights and made it obvious that someone was here. I'm good at thinking, just not in the moment. The house must have looked uninhabited by the time I had gotten up to the attic. This made the house the perfect place to burglarize and steal everything. I was in the attic for about 10 minutes when I heard a window breaking downstairs. He was in the house. My heartbeat was inside of my forehead. He walked around the house for a few minutes. Thud. Thud. I heard the humongous boots marching across the wooden floors. He explored the house for a good while. I was really beginning to wonder where the police were. Typical. I heard him get close to the attic entrance, and that was the moment that pushed me over the edge. I started screaming at the top of my lungs that I had a gun. I told him that I was going to shoot his head off if he didn't leave the house immediately. And to my absolute shock, he ran away. I watched him run down the street as I looked on through the window. It appeared that this guy was even more scared for his life than I was. The police eventually got there and I told them the entire story from beginning to end. They said that a couple of people had been reporting this guy in nearby neighborhoods, so this wasn't the first night he's been out doing this. The police explained that this guy hadn't been violent on any of the occasions they'd been called. They said it was about the 7th time this month that they have responded to a similar incident in a wealthy neighborhood. I guess he's going around looking for an easy way to make money. He hasn't been face to face with any of the homeowners yet, so maybe he isn't a violent criminal, just a criminal in general. I found the entire experience really interesting yet mortifying. Living through it was probably the most scared I've ever been. My mom, her friend, and their daughter didn't even come back early from their trip after it happened. I thought that was a lame move, but what do I know? For revenge, I ate every single pizza roll they had in the freezer, and if you're wondering, there were 3 bags of 90 pizza rolls. I ate over 270 pizza rolls that weekend, and I have no regrets. I sorely needed them after that borderline traumatic experience with the burglar.